I'm Dana Sue, and I'm the creative director at Ballesteri Publishing. Today's topic is how to write a children's book. And I'm so excited to have this as our topic for today's lesson because I love children's books. I am 55 years old, I admit it, and I have been a huge fan of children's books my entire life, since long before I even knew how to read, and my parents were reading me storybooks. I just love them. I love everything about them. One of my all-time favorite children's books to this day remains Dr. Seuss' Green Eggs and Ham. I think it offers an incredible life lesson, and I've carried that with me wherever I've lived and traveled in the world. And that lesson is don't knock it till you try it. So children's books are just wonderful. They're colorful and imaginative and filled with light and energy, and they can also teach us valuable lessons. So obviously, the children's book community at Ballesteri is made up of childhood cancer survivors, uh, patients, their siblings, their parents. We have books, children's books written by parents who lost a child to cancer and have written that children's book based on their child's life. And so we have a variety of different types of children's books at Ballesteri. And the entire reason we began this company was to put a spotlight on pediatric cancer. All of the book sales, all of the proceeds from book sales go into pediatric cancer research and programs. It is the very heart and soul of everything that we do. So children's books have a very special place in my heart. And as a side note, this book was our first book to publish when we started the imprint. This is a children's book that actually was published originally in 2007, and my children wrote it with me helping them when they were ages 3 and 5. And it is the story of what it was like for them having a daddy with cancer. So even though this is not about childhood cancer, it what we learned through this, and side note, my husband was technically a part of the AYA, adolescent young adult cancer age group, because he was in his 30s, I was too. But so we learned a lot during that time of his almost 3 years of chemotherapy treatments, what it's like to be a young child with a parent with cancer. So that's where this book came from, Our Daddy's Cancer, How We Helped Him Fight. And we got all of the rights to the book back to us in 2020. And that's one of the reasons we launched Ballesteri when we did, is because we wanted to republish this book under the Ballesteri imprint. And the art was all done by my precious daughter, and it's just a really great little book. So, and one that I would recommend to anybody who has cancer in their family, and but they also have children at home, to help kind of show them there are some really great ways that you can help your dad or mom or grandma or whoever through a cancer diagnosis. Cancer affects children in a very profound way, and it's important to acknowledge them and acknowledge what they are feeling in that time of difficulty. But today's topic is about how to write a children's book. I know a lot of people want to write them, and there's this myth that writing a children's book is really easy, because after all, it's on a child's level, so of course we can do it. But writing a children's book is probably one of the most challenging kind of books to write if you're going to do it right. So I want to talk a little bit about what goes into it. And if you're considering writing a children's book, whether it's about childhood cancer or any other topic, these are the most important things to think of. And I can share these notes with you at our website, ballesteri.com/author resources. You can grab some of these notes on our website. But one of the things that's important to think of in the very beginning, in addition to, of course, your reason for writing it, would be to define your audience and think about the age group. Because when we go as a publisher and list a children's book, we have to put with that on the catalog where it's listed, we have to put an age recommendation. What age group was this book written for? And so, of course, you've seen some of these in the stores. And so typically, and this is a generalization on children's books, Ages around 0 through toddler, like age 3-ish, they have what are called board books, and you've seen them. They're real sturdy. We don't publish those at Ballesteri. We do your typical glossy cover, hardcover, and paperback books. But board books are those really thick pages. They're pretty indestructible. I mean, they're destructible, but they're not as destructible as a typical book, and they're very colorful, and mostly they're pictures, mostly they're art. And the words, the text of them, are going to be read aloud to the child because typically from ages 0 to 3, you don't know how to read. There are exceptions to that. Um, the concepts are basic. Maybe they're teaching you how to do your color, like your colors or your shapes and things like that. They're fun, they're colorful, and it's mostly about the art. Then we get into around ages 3 to 7, and these are what we mostly do here at Ballesteri. Picture books. That's what those are called. They're called picture books. And we're going to talk about illustrations in a moment, but where text is concerned, in a picture book, you typically will see anywhere from, say, 5 to 700 words. That would be your word count. So it's not super lengthy and wordy. And by the way, that's one of the challenges that a lot of authors have, is that they feel like they need to give all kinds of detail and talk, have a lot of text, but you've got to keep in mind these are for kids. These are for little kids. And some of these picture books are still going to be in the realm of mom and dad are reading this aloud to me. But I'm also learning how to read in this age group. So, are the words ones that I can pronounce, so thinking about, and when we list a book, we talk about whether it's for a young, for a child who's learning to read, or if it's a picture book that a mom and dad is typically going to read to them. But still, language they can comprehend. That's important. And then from there, we get to the early readers. And this is around those same age groups as the picture books, but we're expanding it now. And in this case, we really want to concentrate. This is like usually ages kindergarten through, say, second grade, or first or second grade, somewhere around there. So what is that, like 5 to 7 or 8? Still the same kind of age group as the picture books, but these books are going to be more geared toward, I want the child to read this. I want that little kid to be able to read these words. So we've got to think about what, and this is where if you have friends who are teachers, they are a great asset. It's a wonderful resource. Our educators, they know kids and they know what's appropriate grade level wise. So then after early readers, we get even more advanced. So are you wanting to write a chapter book? You've got these intermediate age kids, intermediate middle school age kids like to read chapter books. When I say middle school, I don't mean like junior high. I'm talking more like grades, say like 4, 5, 6, in that area where they are learning how to read at higher levels. And so you might have a chapter book, and that may or may not have illustrations at all. In fact, most chapter books don't, but you might have like a little graphic or something on to head at the beginning of each chapter. But they're not typically in color. It's a chapter book as we get them geared toward being able to uh, read higher level books. And then from there, we get into more like junior high school and high school age groups. High school, maybe not so much high school, but I'm thinking like maybe through grade 9, where the books have content a little bit longer, higher level content, things that are a little more mature for them. So, but a basic children's book I think when most people think of a children's book, they're thinking of a picture book. Okay, so when you're writing a children's book, you want to think about the grade level, the reading level, the complexity of the language, and um, here's another one, attention span, which for little kids I don't know, adults are the same now on this too. We've all kind of lost our ability to focus, but And that includes me. I'm sure you can tell in this video. But their attention span, how long can they sit there and listen to a story? So thinking about that when you're writing it, think about their emotional level, their ability to comprehend certain topics. And that's a difficult one when some of our books are about cancer. But these are kids who have cancer in their house. So we need to find ways to be able to talk to them about that. Um, Next up, and I want to say this because not all of our children's books at Ballesteria are about cancer. We have books. An example of one is Calligator and the Magic of Kindness, and I love that book. It is not about cancer. It was written by a very beautiful young woman named Haley Dickens, whose 4-year-old daughter Callie died of brain cancer. And she wrote this book to honor the kind of person that Callie was. Callie was this kind, precious little girl who should still be here today. And she left behind her mom, Haley, her dad, Justin, her sister, Cora, and a whole lot of family and friends who adored her. And it's completely tragic and unfair. But this book is not about cancer. It's just a book that makes you think about the kind of person that Callie was. And it's actually interesting because the character in this book is not a little girl. The character is an alligator named Calligator because Callie was from Louisiana, and I said Louisiana. I never say that. I always say Louisiana. But Callie was from Calligator is this alligator from the swamps of Louisiana, and her little friend, best friend, is a chicken, Cora the chicken, and it's so the characters are named after Haley's real children, and and it's colorful and imaginative and cute and it lifts your spirits and it feels like a golden light from above is shining down on you, and that golden light happens to be Callie herself. The art was done by an incredible illustrator named Estella Patrick, and she brought Calligator and Cora Chicken to life, and it's just a precious book. So not all of our books are about the ugly topic of cancer. Some of them are, and they need to be. But this is just a perfect example that Haley, the author here, picked a theme, and the theme happened to be kindness. And she in a way, children's books, like I said when I was talking about Green Eggs and Ham, are a great way to teach a lesson to a child. This lesson happens to be about being kind, but like I said about Dr. Seuss, that lesson I got from Green Eggs and Ham is don't knock it till you try it. How do you know you don't like that? You didn't try it yet, right? Try it, and you may. And so there's typically like a theme or a message that comes in a children's book. There's a That's your purpose for the book. So, what's the lesson? What's the journey? What is it that, some of the common themes that you'll see in children's books are things like friendship and sharing or courage, like dealing with certain emotions like fear or grief. Unfortunately, we have to do that at Bellasteri. We do have a book about losing a sibling, a children's book, and so it can be a heavy topic or it can be a light topic. There manners, that's one. I and the list goes on. There are millions of children's books on the market. It's a very competitive market, which I hope I'd remember to circle back to that in a moment. So once you've picked, your audience, age group, and your theme, um, the next part that is really important in a children's book is your character or your characters. You typically will have a main character and some supporting characters, but kids relate to those characters. Even if you have a story about a hero knocking down the bad guys, the kids need to relate to the good guys of the story, the hero. And but so this is where it gets a little tricky, and I think going back to audience, sometimes you'll notice that boys relate more to boy characters. Interestingly, though, girls will relate to both boys and girls. So if you're writing a children's book and it only has girl characters, you're probably only going to sell to girls. There's nothing wrong with that, but little boys don't typically care to read about little girls. And mind you, I'm doing generalizations here. I don't want to be part of the cancel culture because I'm speaking like this and separating the sexes. But this is just a common truth that boys want boy characters and girls don't care. Interesting, but true. But when you're doing your characters, just keep in mind that, the kids need someone they can relate to in a way or look up to, admire, and think about their personalities and work really well with your illustrator to develop those characters and make them come to life because the kids aren't necessarily paying as much attention in a picture book to the text as they are to the art. Okay. Now, we learned this early on in school that a story, a plot, has a beginning, a middle, and an end. So make sure that your story has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And typically that end means that there was some sort of, if this is a part of your theme, there's some sort of resolution to the conflict resolution, or there was some sort of a lesson that's learned, and you can reiterate it at the end of this story. When you're writing a children's book, think about your style. Um, is it like a poem? Does it rhyme? We have some really good ones at Ballesteri that are really like the aforementioned Calligator is a rhyme. We have another one called Your Magic. It's rhyming, and I mean it could turn easily into a song. It's these are that's a really fun style. The kids seem to like it. This takes me back to my Dr. Seuss love, and his stories rhymed, and so they were fun to read. Um, so rhyme is good. If you don't do that, think about using very simple and engaging language that is easy for a kid to comprehend. In fact, one of the things I always recommend to authors of children's books, after you've written your story, sit and read it out loud. Read it like you are a parent or a teacher reading it to a child. And then if during that out loud reading something seems a little off and you're like, oh, that doesn't sound like something that a 5-year-old would want to hear, rewrite it. In fact, if you have access to young children in your family or your neighborhood or something like that, or your place of worship, like go and actually read that story to them. So, what did you think of it? Kids are very honest. They're going to tell, like, they are sometimes brutally honest. They will tell you, that was boring. And if they do that, go back and rewrite, okay? Because they're your target audience. You might think, well, I'm just writing it for myself, or I'm writing it for, to honor this kid I knew, but you're writing it for kids. And I will tell you this, the people who buy children's books are moms and teachers. Those are your buyers. So make sure they like it too. If their kid likes it, they will. So practice this. Read it out loud to you know an audience of kids. Read it out loud to yourself and make your revisions as needed. So here's my final and most difficult part to share with you, and that is illustrations. So I've got a lot of people who come to me to pitch a really great idea for a children's book. And I will sit there and say to them, that is an amazing idea. Who's your illustrator? And this is where we get into the tricky business of the cost and the difficulty of finding the right person to do your art. There are a lot of really great artists out there. And if they are really great, they're going to charge you a lot of money. I've seen people as low as $100 per illustration to as much as $300 to $500 per illustration. We're not talking about per book. When you have a children's book, you've got, a good probably, maybe 18 illustrations. And so think about how expensive that can get. You may have fewer, but just think about how expensive it gets to hire an illustrator. And that is somebody that now at Ballesteri, without going into all of the details about how we do that, we have some cases in which we will pay the illustrator, but in other cases, we tell the author they need to hire on their own, hire an illustrator and make that contract between the author and the illustrator. We don't do a lot of contracts with illustrators. We prefer that to be something that's between the author and the illustrator. And all of that gets into legalities and stuff. But the importance of finding the right illustrator, you want somebody who jumps into your head and pictures those characters exactly how you have them pictured in your head. It's not easy. There's a reason that they charge so much money. To do one illustration can take weeks on end because you are going back literally to the drawing board to make revisions. And they can be slight, just tiny little things like the author might say, but I don't picture that person's smile looking like that. Can you change this? I've learned through just talking to them about little things that I don't think about, but they notice, like shadows and the degree of the sun shining on a person. Or if I shadow this over here, this needs to be like this, and color and shape and all of these things that just for me, I don't have an eye for it, but a good illustrator does, and it can make or break your book. If the kids don't like the art, they don't want the book, no matter what it's about, no matter what the words are. They want the art. They need the art. And the other thing about art too, and this goes, I won't go into all the detail about an artist's contract or an illustrator contract, but you retain the rights, of course, to use that art in a variety of ways, whether it's promotions or merchandise. And that's the thing, is that I try to tell authors, um, get some merchandise made, whether it's little stickers that, because kids love stickers, or you know, water bottles, or for the grown-ups coffee mugs with one of the illustrations and a quote from the book. Those are all things that you want to be able to have, and it represents your book. And without the art, you don't have a children's book. So all of that is really what goes into writing a children's book. And I will have a document on our website, like I said, and you can always reach out to me if you have any questions. My information is also on the website, ballesteri.com. Thank you so much for tuning in today and letting me talk to you about one of my favorite topics. Have a great day.